Well, we have an old vintage R8 that came in for a refreshing and a tune, and it's been double boxed. And I just want to point this out that we have a slight issue with it. Let's take a look. So the stock's been taken off. That's really good. That's what you want to do with these vintage guns, especially a vintage R10. You want to take the stock off because the R10s are very fragile in this area. But anyway, you had foam under here. That's great. This could have been done a little bit better for what it is. It looks like he really went out to do his best, but it wasn't good enough. Now let's take a look and see what we found. Back here, you'll see that the paper's all torn up. See it? Completely torn up. And then when you move that out of the way, you can see that the box is all shredded up here as well. And it's all dented in, ready to puncture right through this area. Guys, when you ship a rifle, this thing is tossed to and from, up and down, inside out, backwards and forwards. Now, had that been a plastic sight, something would have been broken. But it's an old metal. There's no True Glow parts to it, so she held up just fine. And I just want to point this out. Trigger guards on, protecting the trigger blade. I have always... every now and then I get a gun in with a broken trigger blade. So keep this like that, and it keeps all the screws handy. Don't over tighten it, and you can even take another step once this is on and wrap a little bit of painter's tape around it. Whatever. This should have been bubble wrapped, and then there should have been protection back here. But anyway, he tried his best, and it didn't work out, but luckily nothing was damaged. And his front sight's okay too, but that could have been an issue also if it was a different type of front sight. So now what happens is, guys, know they're going to send their gun in. It's a big step. They're investing money, and they get a little panicky sometimes, and I'm not saying he did. And they need to get a box. They need to get it ready. They got to go to work the next day. They got to get it all together. So sometimes there's a little panic that sets in. Well, don't panic. Take your time, relax, enjoy the whole transition, and think it through. Relax and get the gun set up safe for shipping. And when it's done, and then you ship it. That's it. All right, I may do a video on the refreshing of the internals and all that. I may not. So thanks for hanging out. Well, the R8's on the bench. I decided to bring the camera out and take a look-see. So this gun is full of dust and grease. Somebody has not been into this for quite a long time. There's the forward stock bolt still in there. You can see that somebody was in this gun at one time other than the factory because of the grease buildup right there. It's pretty heavy. Don't think it would have come from the factory like that. Down in there is the metal guy, the original. The trigger's pulled, and boy, inside the trigger area down in there is just packed full of grease on the sidewalls there. The safety's still stuck down in there. Let's see, let's pull that out. Let's tilt that a little bit, get this in there. Doing this with one hand. While trying to hold the camera. Whoa, boy. Just packed full. Just what happens with the old grease. Now, the better part is the trigger. Wow. This is one that I haven't seen like that in a while. I don't know if you can pick up on this, but it's caked up as usual, and it's all sticky, gooey, gummy. But that's no problem. We have an ultrasonic cleaner, and this would be a perfect time to use it. This will be the first time too. I have an ultrasonic cleaner, got it all set up, ready to go. Look at that, huh? It's not even on yet, and it's bubbling. Well, we're going to put it in there. Give me a second and put the camera down, and then we'll take a peek. Okay, we got it going. Set for 20 minutes at 80 degrees. That's just for starters. I think it's just going to take a little while. But I can see the supersonic stuff going on down in there. Well, let me give it its 20 minutes and we'll come back and see how we made out. Well, here's that ultrasonic cleaner I was talking about. I don't remember. I think it was like 65 bucks or something. I just looked for the one that gave you a decent size. The lid sweats and gets all steamy. You can have it's got a heater in there, and I had it up to 80 degrees, and it gives you this little basket. And I was surprised because I thought the basket was going to grab the top of this, and this was just going to sit without touching the bottom. But this indeed rests on the bottom there. But with the way they have the little feet, everything does vibrate. Now, there's a screw down in there, and I know there's a screw in there. I just didn't want to get it at the time. But all this stuff was totally murky water. You couldn't see it. It was brown. And it's nice to see that it's settled. So that means I can pump this out and then leave the crap on the bottom and then get rid of the crap and then get back to some clean stuff, and I'll be ready for it next time. But it did a fantastic job. Absolutely fantastic job. I'll see you on the next clip. Well, this Beeman R8 was a very interesting rifle. We've tried 4 lubes. We tried 3 different springs. Now, we originally went with the Macari kit. Macari has a kit for the R8, at least he did at the time we were buying them. And his guide looks like this. This is his spring. And I had to make a bearing washer for it because his guide had a built-in step. It wasn't an actual bearing washer that could rotate. So I lathe turned that out and made a bearing ring for this gun. We also tried a top hat to make a top hat for it, and we tried even putting a thrust washer in, and either or none of that would work because this gun will not take any of that preload. It's just not going to happen. We tried 3 different springs as well. The original spring that was in the gun that I found was not the original, but the one that was in there. And all the lube that was in this gun was just overkill. Somebody just going by whatever, and you know, first of all, you have a gun that it's this powerful. You don't need all that lube. The power's not there. So the problem with this gun that we were having, we were trying to get our feet per second. So I went online and thought, well, you know what? We've been chasing the donkey's tail here. Let's see what other information we can find online with this beautiful R8 gun. And lo and behold, I found a post by Tom Gaylord. He had an R8 and he was doing a post on it, and he had the same issues. So 4 different lubes, 3 different springs. I even tried, one of the springs was a Hornet spring. I have some Hornet springs up here that are modded. They're not full new ones. But they were new. They've just been modded. But the Hornet spring was the coil separation seemed to be a little bit less, and it didn't give me anything more out of the gun with the heavier wire. So I think it was a 122, 117, and a 130. But we went back to Macari spring. If you work on one of these R8s, I would highly suggest you not to forget to preset the spring. Get it in there and preset it, and then continue on with it. So as far as the seals, we had another Macari seal. This was something I saved. It was still in good condition. It's one of his older ones, and it's very tight going into the receiver tube. So I turned his other seal down that we got, the new one, because obviously it's going to come out oversized, and you're supposed to turn it down. And it depends what your receiver tube is. That's how you work these guns. So I turned that down with some 400 grit and some oil on my lathe. And this material turns very easily. There's no doubt about it. So I finally got it down, and what I call for Vyrock is a sticky fit. So here it is in the gun. I can slide it back and forth, right? Push it in with my finger, but it's not going to fly out of your receiver tube, and it's not going to fly down if you shake it like that. It's what I call a sticky fit. Now that's proper for a Vyrock. There's the new seal, and we don't have to worry about it. There's plenty of clearance there. So that's what I call a good fit for a Vyrock. Now, you can actually get it in a little bit less than that, but you're also pushing your luck with a brand new seal. Should leave yourself some break-in room, okay? The gun's not shot yet. You're going to shoot it. Leave a little break-in room. These seals, this material wears in very easily. So with all that said, 3 springs later or whatever it was and 4 lubes, one of the things on Tom Gaylord's post was he was having problems getting his feet per second, and Gene from Pyramid Air had recommended him to cut back all the lubes on his spring that he had in there, and also changed to a different lube. Now this is an interesting lube. It's gear oil, and he suggests it's non-synthetic. Must be non-synthetic. Now, I did try this lube, okay? Actually, what I did with this lube, I didn't really like it, to be honest with you, because it's very thick. Here's some of it. Here's what it looks like. It's very thick. To me, it looks like the type of lube that would tack out faster than other lubes through a period of time. You know how lubes get tacky when they get old. This is just that type of lube that has that appearance in my mind. Now, do I know that for a fact? No, I do not, but that's just going by what it looks like. So what I did with that particular lube, give me a second, I burnished the air chamber with that. In other words, the walls have all been cleaned out. I tried Molly lube, I tried my red synthetic lube, I tried something else, and then finally it went to this. And I burnished the steel walls after everything's been cleaned out. So now the wall metal has been coated. It's not like you can wipe your finger on them and then pull out and see oil on your finger. You just know that the walls are now burnished with this oil, and they are coated. And then behind the piston seal, I used a little bit of this mixed in with some of my other lube. I tried to blend it together to cut the thickness down on this, and with that I was a little bit more satisfied. So once the piston was inside, are you still with me, and down, this area was lubed up with a couple drops of my lube as well. I did not put this thick lube back in. And that way it's all been rolled around, and then what you do is you slide the piston back like this, and it wipes everything and smears it all around. Are you with me? And then you can look up in there with a flashlight into the walls, see exactly what it looks like. If you think there's too much, you can go in there and take a little out with a Q-tip. It's real simple. So we got this gun to where we like it now. Now my elevation's 3,200 feet above sea level. And with a 8-grain pellet online, the information says around 700 feet we should see. There's another post, they said 720, but I don't remember the grain pellet. Now we were using the Crossman 7.9 grains, Crossman domes. That's all I have. And otherwise, because I got JSB heavies and I don't want to use that, obviously. But at any rate, we got through the gun. I'm satisfied now with what we came up with. We just left no stones unturned. Now, real quickly, here's what the gun offers. It's a 2-piece cock and arm. There's a really interesting roller underneath there. So this arm goes through here, goes through this. Now, if you have one of these guns and you're working on it, be careful, because this whole setup here, this is a nut, can just fall out. So pay attention, take pictures, and then you'll know how it was. But the whole arm goes through here and then drops into the cocking slot. The shoe isn't really a shoe, it's just something that drops in and grabs the piston. What keeps the arm in place is this guy here, and then that roller rolling back and forth, so it's kind of interesting altogether. Now also we found on the gun, the interesting thing was the spring jam. It's a screw spring jam. I think we talk about that in our picture show. In other words, there's a screw there, and you would unscrew it and then pull your jam out. At any rate, the barrel, here's what I found on the gun too. Of course, the barrel is always, they get cleaned. I did a pellet to bore test to see what the bore fit to the pellet is. Now here's a rod. You can see, yeah, you're still in the picture, that the rod's not much bigger than the bore. Length of the bore. The bore's around 18.5 inches. Yep, there we go, to the face of that breech seal. And don't forget, I also did the work between the barrel forks here, because that was a mess. That was a horrible mess. If I had a milling machine, I would have milled that area would have made life so much simpler, but I don't have one because it's just not enough work for me to have a milling machine, and it's not worth it. So let's do a pellet to bore test, and I'll show you what I found in this particular rifle. We'll stick the Crossman pellet in there. Now let's get it down in there just below and inside the breech area. So basically what I found in this particular gun with these pellets, that halfway through around 9 inches, this thing has total pellet to bore free fall. So let's see, are we in there? Let's push the rod down slow. Now the barrel's on 45 or better degree. The barrel's laying on that angle so that the rod weight isn't fully on it in the vertical position. So now usually when you don't have the pellet to bore contact, this rod will drop. So you're trying to find a balanced place where the rod's not having full weight on the pellet. I'm going slow and I'm not picking the rod up, I'm just sliding it through. See that? Total free fall. Now who knows what's happened with this particular gun through the ages, where, you know, did somebody put something in it? We don't know. Did it come from the factory that way? I do have a camera to go down the bore, but we're not going to go and do that. I'm going to leave it alone. We're going to get this gun together. We'll do a clip on our feet per second, and then we'll see it on that clip. And thanks for hanging out. Well, here's a diagram of the Beeman R8. If you look online for the diagrams, I found that some of them have different numbers, and I don't know why. But these numbers that I found weren't coinciding with Air Guns of Arizona's numbers. But we got through. We were trying to find a piston seal for this gun. I could have sworn T.W. Chambers said that you know, the HW50 would fit this. Now they must have meant the original old one, because it must have been a smaller tube size. This tube size would not fit the modern HW50s, and that's what I got when I got a piston seal. We tried to go into Air Guns of Arizona. But anyway, let's get back to our gun. It was filthy dirty, way overdone with the lube. To me, it was obvious somebody didn't know what they were doing. And this happens a lot with air guns. Look at all that. Can you see it better now? The worst was between the forks. Look at all this here. Look at all that there. That's because it was done improperly. Looks like it was in a coal mine. I found the weld joints for the cock and arm had these two little pieces, one on each side, just like this one here, just hanging on for dear life. I took a little screwdriver and popped it up, and it broke right off. And this is probably some type of wax and polish in the gun at one time, and it's just staying on there. And I'm not going to go further into it to get it off. It's not my gun. Breech seal was totally toast. Also down inside the receiver tube, see, we can get a good picture of it. After it was cleaned, this still stayed at the very bottom. It's all charcoaled up from over lubing it. And you can see another picture of it here, this black stuff right there. See it? All that. Almost 3 cans of brake cleaner on this gun. And of course we're blow drying it with 90 pounds of air. We're going through a brake cleaner and different things and paper towels. Cleaning up the piston there on the lathe with some grit paper and some later also with some oiled paper. You can see right there. Now we're doing the piston stem. This was hanging on for dear life, but I finally got that all cleaned out. That dried up, tacked up grease. Now the piston's starting to come out a lot better now. So we did try to put a thrust bearing washer at the bottom. Here again is the vintage pistons from back in the old days. We can see the splines are sticking up. If you try to make a top hat for pistons like that and you don't have that thrust washer in there, if you make the top hat dimension a slip fit like I do, and I do the same with the guides, it's going to grab on them splines. And there's no sense making a top hat or the guide if you're not going to have a slip fit, because it's incorrect. Anyway, the thrust washer would have gotten us above those splines, and we wouldn't have had a problem. But the Beeman R8 is not designed to have any preload other than that little bearing washer by the spring guide. Here was the original replacement piston seal that was on the gun. It was a Macari seal. God knows how long that's been on there, but obviously it's totally trashed. And there you can see that it was shot until it couldn't take it anymore. And there's your breech seal, totally toast. We have the goo gone literally pouring out of the barrel here. That's how I treat barrels. I get them totally saturated and run the patches that are wet through at the same time till we get the barrel clean. Now this is the end plug. We did a spring pass on the plug there, and you can see that nice taper that we talk about later on. That taper also helps seat this thing properly when you go to put it back, when you screw that on. There it is there. And this is the Ultrasonic Cleaner. All that dirt is from the trigger. I didn't stick the pistons in there. But anyway, here's the original Macari guide. We are removing that step up that he had in there that was built in. Now the fit to the spring was doable. It was okay, and we went with it. But in a more powerful gun, that fit with the spring guide would have needed to be better in my book. So we are okay there, no complaints. But if I'm going to have a spring guide, it's going to have a bearing washer that's going to rotate along with the guide. One of the things I learned about air guns is don't leave a stone unturned. If you have an opportunity to make something better, then do it. Why would you stop there and make that one piece? I mean, would it hurt? Would it make it better if you put the bearing washer in like I did? It's certainly not going to hurt it. And if you have an opportunity to go a step further, then by all means, do it. Now, the record trigger on this R8 still had that tab there. That's the modern tab that came out that people bend back to get that trigger travel tightened up a little bit better to remove some of the trigger travel. And this stock had that cup in there. I'm fairly sure that's the way it came, and that was really cool. I was glad to see it. And there's some of the things we were trying, different springs. Top hat, bearing washer at the bottom of the piston like we talked about, and it just would not take it. Originally I started out with this here Delrin bearing washer that I made. And you know what? Because it's an Iconic gun, I went with brass just because it's an extra step further and I thought it deserved it. Now I actually think this is the original spring that came out. But anyway, you can see that junky lube on there. I just want to see how it fit on the original one as well. And actually this metal guy did fit that spring pretty nice. I was surprised. Normally they don't fit at all. They're undersized, but this one had a little bit of a grip. I was quite taken by it. And you can see the rings here that we cut through trying different springs out. It was 3 springs, 2 seals we were trying, and 4 different types of lube, including the moly lube. So here we're going back now. This is midway through our process of seeing what we're going to get out of this gun. And there's the Delrin bearing ring. And later you'll see that we changed it to brass. So here we have some sandpaper I put on a dowel, glued it on there with some super glue to get to the bottom of that air chamber. Now you can see a little bit better. We got it fairly cleaned up. Now the gun was crosshatched, which was interesting, but we didn't go with the moly, even though we tried all the different lubes. So there, it's starting to come up. It's getting better and better. So we're getting somewhere with the bottom of that air chamber. Now this was a real disaster. It may not look like much to you, but this here was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Have no idea what caused that, how that got like that. It's a mystery as far as I'm concerned. Something had to be done. If I had a mill machine, that would have been great, but guess what? I don't have one. I'm sure the owner's not going to pay me to go to the machine shop to have somebody mill that out. So we worked it by hand with lapping compound. There's another shot of it. Just look at that. What happened there? We'll never know. So there's some of the springs we were trying out and different things through testing. JM was a 122 wire. And then I had another JM spring, which was a 129 wire. There's the light coat of lube that we put on. Something like this, that's all you need, is just enough to keep the ping noise down by dampening the spring by coating it. You don't need to glob the lube on, for God's sakes. There's the pellets we were using through this entire gun. Domes 7.9. Now originally, after using that new lube that Gene from Pyramid Air told Tom Gaylord, you'll hear about that later, we were getting around 640, 648.9, and there's our gun. This gun's been put together and taken apart so many times. If I had $1 for each time we did, we would be looking pretty good. There's some of those domes. No, these aren't the domes. These are those pointed ones. But here's that lube Gene from Pyramid Air recommended to Tom. Tom Gaylord did one of these R8s, and he was having problems getting his feet per second. It is a non-synthetic gear oil. There's the name of it. So I actually used it, and I got pretty darn good results compared to where we left off, but I didn't like the lube. So at any rate, I think because of that lube's thickness, the seal was able to grab more. I don't know what the deal is or why. It just gave us a little bit more feet per second. So here's what between the forks, the porthole area looks like now. Believe me, it's not perfect, but we had to do something for this gun. But anyway, it's done now. And because of that, we had to adjust the breech seal. So there's a shim at the bottom of the breech area. Then I took some of the seal down to make up the splitting of the hairs and the difference. See that? It's a Delrin shim. Then I took some of the seal down. And then we tried different variations with the tissue test to get the seal so it wasn't too high that it needed to be. And then we were happy on all the results we were doing with our testing on the breech seal alone. And there, I just want to point out, you see this here, we talk about that later. Even though the trigger's in, this whole area can turn on you. Then when you go to put your trigger guard on through your stock, it won't line up because this is on an angle. and you can't get your trigger guard to drop down into your stock slot. So you just got to make sure when you put your gun stock on and the trigger guard that this is all where it needs to be, so that this is perfectly center. So there's some original Crony results using that gear oil. 661 was a high, 658, 653, 665. That's a lot better. We were getting maybe 645, 648, and 638 after we were all done. What I did with that lube is basically thinned it out. It was too thick for my liking, and I wasn't going to put it in there, and I don't care who likes it or not. That was my feeling on the lube. Well, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you on another clip. Well, I wasn't going to put this in the film, but let's just do it here. So you have a low-powered rifle like this. You don't need a spring compressor. You can put this all together by hand. We'll do that on camera. Now, it's a Delrin guide, so the Delrin's smooth as it is. Inside this spring, there's lube there from when we've been in and out of the gun and wiped it clean to do our show and tell. So if you're going to take a gun like this, you don't need any heavy lubes. Really, you could put this back probably the way it is, to be very honest with you, as long as that guide fits properly. Now, this guide is minimum fitting this spring for this power of a gun. If say this was an R9, you would want a better fit than that, but this is acceptable. It's within the range as far as I'm concerned. But let's take a look at the lube now. I got some of this red lube. You just want to coat that spring, because coating the spring is going to help any of those harmonic ping sounds or vibrations, whatever you want to call them. I'm not going down in this area here, and I'm not putting it on a whole lot. I'm just getting some type of coating on there. See that? Some down towards the spring guide area as well. And then you're basically keeping this thing to dampen the ping sound now that the spring steel is coated. So now that is hardly anything, okay? But yet it's not dry. That's acceptable in this gun. So that's what you would want on a gun like this. So we'll get that guy in there, and then we'll wrap it up and show you how easy it is to put this together with the spring compressor. Now, Beeman and Viroc, whatever, they make this totally beveled. It's there for a reason. Everything on an air rifle is there for a reason, and everything on an air rifle is important. So what happens is it easily seats itself. So we'll go down in there. Now let me make sure that the piston is back. Yep, piston's back. Now I have a glove on the right hand because you have that slot there for your record trigger. You can't afford to get hurt. It's very easy to get hurt if you're not paying attention. So we'll just line it up and we'll push down. And then you don't even have to hold the bottom in the beginning. Well, actually it'd be better if you can get your proper grip at here where you can make that turn and then hold the bottom. It's just that easy. And now you're in. So we can screw this in, get it in all the way, and we'll almost be ready to put this together to do a Crony review. I didn't mention, but I got some parts from AOA. They were very, I got a salesman, and here's the box that the parts came in. So I went to Macari, but I also tried some stuff from AOA, the Air Guns of Arizona. But if you get stuff from them, Viroc parts, you've got to ask for salesmen, because you're never going to get that phone in the tech department to pick up. They're just too busy. So anyway, your end comes around here. One thing I will say real quick, when you put this all together and go to put your stock on, sometimes even when the trigger's in here, this can rotate just enough to put that trigger unit on a slight angle, and then when you go to put your trigger guard on, it won't drop into the wood stock because this isn't set up right. So check that out. Make sure it's centered or it's in the position where it's not interfering with underneath here, and it'll drop in. So take it from me. There's a little tip. See you on the next clip where we do some crony numbers. All right, I started ahead of you with the first crony shot there. So far we're at 645.6. Now don't forget, my elevation here in Billings, Montana is 3,100 feet above sea level. So further closer to shoreline, you're going to get better feet per second. 647. Now what I found out was I made that brass thrust washer or bearing washer, and it really helped out. But when I originally did crony numbers on the gun, believe it or not, I forgot to put it in. And you know, because we were just trying to see where we were at. Many times I will put a gun together and back and put it together several different times through the processes. 644.6. So I would say at my elevation, I'm happy with this. The owner's going to be happy too, because originally we were getting like 636 or something like that, and I thought, wow, that's really way off. Let's do one more. But what are you going to do? You have a bore that half of it has free fall, so that really plays a lot into it. 642.6. So 42.6 there. I'll do one more for you, and then we'll wrap it up. Now it also changes. The pellet to bore fit will change as you get into the more powerful guns. This is a certain type of power level, right? We all know that. Very interesting gun. And the higher in power you go with a bore like this can be totally night and day difference. Now I am currently doing Hatson QE 135. We're rebarreling it as well. And that's what we found. We had an oversized bore. 638.9. Let's leave it at that. See you on the next clip, if there's a next clip. Thanks for hanging out. Well, there she is. She's all done. The beautiful Beeman R8. Now, it's a shame that bore has 9.5 inches or 9 inches of free fall. Because of that, you're not going to get your crony results. You won't even get a proper, you know, crony results, because it depends on what the pellet fit is. With those Crossman pellets, they vary. So in other words, if the barrel was fine, if you had a good bore all the way through, then you can look at your crony results for consistency and see what your standard deviation would have been. Anyway, that's where we are, and that's it. It's better than what it could have been with a bore like that. Now the bluing on this gun really needs to be re-blued, but it's all there for somebody who wants to do it. If I had a new barrel, I would love to rebarrel that. That's an old style where it's pinned, but I don't have the barrel and I don't have the gun because it's not my gun. Well, I hope you liked the little film there. Thanks for hanging out. Take care and be safe.